The Commonwealth, a region which hosts some of the most dangerous raiders, creatures, and synths known to mankind. Yet there was a man who sought to conquer the wasteland with one singular weapon. A weapon which was consistently considered by many outlets and players as a crime against society when used. Today we're going to be proving that Fallout 4 can be beaten with one of the most useless weapons to ever exist within the game, the rolling pin. Not only will we be beating the base game, but we're also going to be attempting the Pearl Harbor and Dookie World DLC. To kick off this high-octane challenge, we dove right into character creation, where I created some kind of disabled Italian mob boss and the ghoul from the Fallout show, but if he had a mustache. I finally had some time to relax, but as soon as I began to enter my REM state, the doorbell rang. To my surprise, it was my favorite Snake's oil salesman, Todd Howard, so I greeted him with some kind words.
Go away.
Regardless, the man was not leaving, which meant we had to pick our perks for this challenge. Since we're going to be using a piece of a kitchen utensil for this run, I decided to focus most of my points into strength, endurance, and sprinkle some into charisma. With our forms all done, I slammed the door on the good salesman. But as I was about to return to my favorite position on the couch, it was taken by the Soul Eater. Everything was going wrong. I simply couldn't find any peace, and then my child began to cry too. I had enough. I told my wife she can go to the park with the demon spawn, as I can't miss the World Series. Yeah, the wife didn't like that. Luckily, Cumsworth interrupted the ass whooping I was about to receive. I rushed into the kitchen where I received the worst news possible. The World Series that I was about to watch is cancelled due to nuclear warfare? We quickly sprinted out of the door, towards a perfectly built vault right next to our house, and as we slowly descended the elevator, we witnessed the beginning of the end. Luckily, down in the vault, the customer service was excellent. They supplied me with this hot spandex outfit, and they even offered a bed. Hey wait, why is this closing?
Hello, guys? I think I'm ready to come out now.
After a much needed nap, we got woken up by this smiling dickhead who decided that you can skip the adoption process and relieve me off my headache. But hey, at least the guy had a good time. After awakening again, we faced our first problem in this run. We didn't have our weapon of mass destruction. So we had two options. Option 1, we could do some crazy code hacking and have the magical stick of bonking right within our hands. Or option 2, which required me to head to Sandy Coves where it's a guaranteed spawn. We're for sure gonna make this experience as miserable as possible. So we picked option number 2. But we still needed to get out of this vault. So we got out of the ice cream freezer and faced our first true enemy of the run, the cockroaches. Since we can't do any damage, I had to utilize some door mechanics. Luckily, these stupid fuckers couldn't open these doors. But the issue was I couldn't open the vault door till I lost aggro. So I spent a few minutes looking around and crouching till I lost aggro. With the vault door open and the iconic smell of putrid ass of the wasteland, I decided to make a quick stop at the Red Rocket to grab some extra protection, in case we find some of the rejects of the wasteland. Our way from the vault to the cove was pretty clear, and once we made our way inside, I was finally able to link up with the savior of this run. This collab was about to go as hard as the Kendrick vs Drake beef. As soon as I made my way towards the entrance to leave, some synths decided to make a stop to see some of the older synths growing old. This was the perfect opportunity for me to show them the sheer strength of my rolling skills. Yeah, let's just move on from that. Comscore was far more welcoming. The first round of raiders didn't really pose much danger to my dog comrade and me. Once we made our way into the museum, things were moving rather swiftly, apart from a rare death or two. We met Preston, who directed me towards the power armor, but this was our first true test of this challenge. I used the angry lizard to absolutely destroy most of the raiders, but then the issue became was how we're gonna murk the sewage lurker. I realized that this dumb rat wouldn't be able to fit through the doorway just like the average American. This became a test of mental endurance. This essentially came down to how many times could I bonk the Deathclaw before my brain cells all died out. I felt like Muhammad Ali with the way I was dancing around the Deathclaw swings. After many minutes of playing whack-a-mole, I was finally able to persevere against the advertisement for the average creature in Florida. We met up once again with Preston, who guided me towards the infamous Diamond City. But before we could enter, I got haggled by this wannabe journalist. Clearly, I wasn't getting in till I talked to the Joker lookalike. After some lying and manipulation, the synth mayor greeted me with some helpful tips about fighting my son, avoiding Drake, ignoring the journalist poser, and finding Nick Valentine. But Nick Valentine seemed to be nowhere to be found, and it somehow became our job to find him. Ellie, the secretary, informed us that some of the make-believe mobsters from the great streets of Italy have stolen our man. Once arriving at the subway station, I was once again required to put my kitchen skills to use. As soon as my eyes locked in with the cosplayers, I let out all my rage and absolutely demolished the first wave of gangsters. Now the issue came as soon as I reached downstairs. I simply didn't have any range due to the fact I was using a melee weapon, so my strategy came down to going in hard and finishing fast. fast, before my enemies could land a single shot on me. Normally around these parts, I would utilize the stairs, but this time, due to my disability, I had to play on the ground floor. Fortunately, we found a room which provided me with enough cover to swing deep to punish my foes and heal when the chance arose. I could only get a few hits before I was close to being sent to the iconic loading screen. I managed to smoke most of the triggerment, and once getting into the vault, it was a smooth sail towards Nick. The detective was just about as happy to see me like Twitter Blue users seeing the 1 cent earned from their tweets. Yet, we weren't done just yet. We cleared the rest of the vault with Nick till we reached the final boss of this dungeon. McDonald's Malone was standing between us and freedom. We did the only noble thing we could have done, which was sending Darla on her way. After that, me and Skinny went to Pound Town. It was a battle of sweat, blood, and cum. I clapped Malone so hard you could hear those cheeks in the next vault over.
Help me! Help!
Nick was quite proud of our work, and he was quite excited in helping find our missing son. Meeting the good old detective at his residence, Nick started to ask what my ideal lazy Sunday was. I was quite confused, but we managed to align that the man behind the kidnapping of my son was a man by the name of Kellogg. Nick's first lead came with checking out Kellogg's house, but honestly this was more of an opportunity for me to scrub every possible resource, as we were definitely gonna need it in the next section. With that lead from the famous cereal brand's house, Dogmeat smelled some of his used underwear and led the way. As we closed towards Kellogg's home, we actually got to witness a cameo from the famous actor, the Yao Gui Bear. Some knights from the Brotherhood might see this as a challenge, but for me, this was a piece of cake. Arriving at Kellogg's base, I was once again reunited with my #1 enemy, the synths. These fuckers hit me harder than a Fast and Furious car crash scene. Not only did I get to enjoy laser beams, which annihilated my health bar within milliseconds, but I got to rethink my life choices every time I got stun locked by the Synth Street Fighter ultimate combo. The pain was subsidizing as we got lower into the base, simply due to the fact there was less synths, but anytime I got locked into a duel of mechanical spasms against the baton wielding synths, I died a little. Finally, I managed to reach the off-brand Balding Crusader, and clearly we had beef, so we were gonna have to settle this the good old-fashioned way. To my surprise, I managed to beat Kellogg rather quickly. I made sure to leave my last mark of disrespect by looting everything and leaving his cold, lifeless body in the concrete to rot. Oh yeah, the Brotherhood finally arrived, but all my homies hate the Brotherhood. We stand the goal. With Kellogg dead, we received an interesting number of flashbacks through the magical conch shell that was attached to Kellogg's head. Fortunately, we learned of the Institute's darkest secret, that whenever their ass would begin to contract, a major molecular combustion would begin to occur and they would be teleported back to the Institute. But to get to the Institute, we needed a bit more prep. Our first stop was running a crusade through the green swamp where Shrek resided in. I would have quite a good amount of negative things to say about this putrid green sea of ass, yet today it was a breeze. Maybe I was just in tune in my fear and speedrun towards the green Giga Chad. Regardless, Virgin pointed us towards the courier's factory of misery. This next section can be considered to be an equivalent of stepping on Legos in the dark. The second my 5'7" ass landed into Green Tech Genetics, I knew I was in for an ass clapping. At this point, these so-called gunners were shredding my health bar relatively quick, especially the turret. Even staring at one for longer than a second meant I was burning at least one stim pack. Things were tough. Quick saving was doing no favors for me either, as each death allowed the opposition to inch closer, resulting in me getting hit before I even loaded in. As my supply of stim packs ran low, I realized that my only option of surviving this form of masochism would be to recreate the greatest Mirror's Edge cosplay that has hit the wasteland yet. I sprinted past anything that would cause my sphincter to tighten. Through this intense strategy, I managed to reach the courier. Normally this fight is quite difficult when only using melee, but something magical happened. I managed to somehow knock this fucker's gun straight out of his synth hands. The battle came down to this man being giga stunned, where he couldn't even react to the sheer damage each bonk would do. With the courier dried off and finished, we secured the courier chip, but we needed help in utilizing it. This is where the railroad came into play. Through the leftover stains of blood sacrifices done by the sacred LeBron James, it pointed us in the direction of the old church, where I solved one of the hardest ciphers known to man. Once inside, I stared straight into the crosshair of a minigun, but it appreciated me a lot more once I said I had the courier chip. Even though I had a way to get into the Institute right away, instead I had to run some personal errands for the anemic human cosplayers because it's never that simple. If you love Assassin's Creed, you're gonna love this section. As for some reason on this PewDiePie bridge section, Deacon is unable to walk any faster than the average Walmart mobility scooter user. To make it worse, if you move too fast for Deacon, he will completely stop walking. But then again, this was a creation engine game. There's a potential alternative dimension that if he walked any faster, a nuclear chain reaction resulting in the combustion of my PC would occur. At the end of the bridge, I shared San Andreas sacred cheat codes to the homeless looking contractor, in which he provided us with info about the secret synth infested factory. I decided that going in head first would result in an instant game over screen, so we decided to use the alternative secret route that would be significantly better. After Deacon finished his hacking arc, we dove deep into the synth lair. I was quite perplexed about what to do about the firing squad that stood between me and my way forward. I tried the approach of rushing them like an ape and swinging, but I got instantly decimated. I tried to use Nick and Deacon to take them out, but I really didn't want to spend the next 40 years of my life watching these two bums lay on the floor and ask for stims. So I did the only noble thing I could do, and I decided to just run past them. Somehow, I made it past them with a sliver of my health, but I made sure to come back once I acquired a better position and showed them what the two champion can do. Once we made our way into the main room, we were finally able to grab some momentum. I was stinging like a bee against the synths. There simply was no fight for them. I even got to utilize my favorite door strat. After an abundance of bonking against the walking microwaves, the disgruntled misfits and I made it into the vault, which meant we successfully managed to complete the side quest for the slavers of the railroad. This meant we could finally continue with the mission of finding our son. We decided to destroy a piece of historical significance, and I built a giant power sucker which got us into the institute. We finally made it, potentially inches from our son, but there was some kind of mysterious voice guiding us through the facility, spitting facts about all the time and hard work they have put into this. I really didn't care. I just wanted to find my son and start laying the pipe into these bastards for taking my son. After some meandering, there he was, caged like a bird. I was horrified, and then the mysterious voice walked through the door. Man, was this guy fuck ugly. His nose was unproportionately big, his lips quivered every time he opened his mouth, and his forehead was simply too big for his face. And then he dropped the bomb on us. He was our son. After a few moments, I could see it. Yeah, I could see the resemblance. The twist was so shocking that I dropped to my knees in Walmart, but then the baby came and shot somebody. Regardless, this changes a lot of things. Not only was this fucker older than me, but he was the enemy of my friends, which meant I was conjuring my Splinter Cell cosplay. Unfortunately, it seemed like I was going to be stuck here for a while, since our boy Sean had business to do. I did some mindless tasks in the meantime, like meeting up with the Big Four at the Institute and meeting with our inside leaker. Once I finished the task, I was finally able to go back to the Commonwealth, where I reported back towards the #FreeSynth movement. I got sent to retrieve some kind of code. I would love to tell you how this was going to help the leaker, but I haven't paid much attention to the story since the first loading screen. Generally, this was easy. I really enjoyed being perma-stunned by ghouls.
It's gonna get a lot worse later.
I returned to the Institute, where I beat some guards, gave the code to our secret agent, and I met up with Sean, who had a mission for us in the wild. The task that landed into our lap was simple. Go to the corner of the map and retrieve the synth. Man, was this mission a shit show though. Not only did the raiders pull up, but the Brotherhood also did too. It seemed like everyone and their mother wanted this Randy. Regardless, it was time to get to work. I started my act of destruction with fighting an initial round of raiders. This session of bonking was going relatively well till it wasn't. An Assaultertron decided to absolutely ruin my day. This was the ultimate antagonist of this run. This fucker was able to not only stun me for long periods of time, but also a beam that would delete me off the server. This came down to slowly beating him in his periods where he was cooled off. Finally, I was allowed to talk to our Institute courier, but he was slightly preoccupied with the Brotherhood vertibird. Once that thing crashed harder than the market in 2020, we started our mission of recovery. Most of the shipping yard was relatively easy to deal with. Even when we got onto the ship, there was nothing that could hold back the sheer strength of my rolling pin. Once we made it on top of the ship, I had a chance to pull the magical words to turn off the synth raider. But since I wasn't racist, I decided I would beat his ass and the rest of his squad. I cleaned up the raiders with swift vengeance, and after which I made a quick stop to pick up some supplies and head back towards the Institute, where we got tasked with the takeover of Bunker Hill. Yet, I couldn't let this one slide. I quickly informed the railroad, which awarded me the home advantage, and our only foe of this area was the Brotherhood. This time around, I decided to take the back seat and let everyone else deal with the Brotherhood. I felt like I was truly living up to my cuck fantasy that I always desired within these runs. The only real fight we had was with the courier, but I managed to knock his pea shooter right out of his hands, which resulted into this becoming a slapping contest between two apes. After I slapped the dear living fuck out of this bowling ball of a man, Father called me upon for a meeting on the roofs of the Commonwealth. This boy dropped some hard knowledge on our ass, which hit me right into the feels of being a father. Yet, we still had some obligations with the Institute before we could pull our version of the twist within this story. First on the list was a meeting we had to attend. I was quite surprised by the announcement, because every Tuesday we're gonna have tacos. This made me ponder, am I truly doing the right thing helping the railroad? What if I missed Cheesecake Fridays? No, I had to save the Commonwealth. This was my mission. Next on our list was retrieving the fusion reactor, but there was one problem. The tower in which the object of importance was held was filled to the brim with the Brotherhood of Steel. Right off the bat, my ass started getting beamed from all sides. I felt like that couch scene, and I was in the middle. My only way of survival was to consistently try to get either one of the soldiers or knights out on the deck, where I turned this 20v1 into a 1v1. The soldiers were relatively easy enough, but the game really changed with the knights, as a single punch felt like I was getting discombobulated by Sherlock Holmes. My only way of dealing with these mindless bots was to throw some swings while consistently moving backwards, as any hit would result in a perma-vegetative state. I even got to enjoy a legendary soldier, who absolutely mopped me beyond repair, but whenever I finally knocked his weapon out of his hands, I absolutely ruined him, sending him down to the Shadow Realm. With the floor cleared, we jumped into the elevator, where I had to hide like a bitch behind Deacon and the woman who was disgusted to breathe the same air as me. As we slowly descended into this broken elevator, there was a trap set by the Brotherhood, but they made a mistake thinking they were trapping me. Instead, they were trapped in here with me. Fortunately, I was in my element, as my smacking and blocking were just on point. I quickly managed to clean up the extra reinforcements that tried to ruin my day. Leading into the reactor, I suited up and grabbed the MacGuffin item. What this meant was, the facility was on lockdown, and we had a huge problem. The sentry bot arrived, and it was here to start collecting skulls. I could not get close to this fucking thing in any capacity. There was a significant amount of soil building within my pants. Yet I noticed something. Whenever the sentry bot would roll down the stairs, I would be able to break through the space-time continuum and deliver my hits directly through the stairs. This level of tech peaked my dopamine levels to ultimate heights and indirectly saved our run. But we weren't in the clear just yet, as this motherfucker was a legendary, which meant 2 stages of straight bullshit. This was at least 15 minutes I'll never get back in my life, but the level of satisfaction to outsmart and destroy this husk of metal was straight peak climax. But this was only part 1 of the excruciating amount of bullshit. The true antagonists of this run decided to make an appearance, but this time around, it was 2 of them. The Assaultatron came in full force, and I was ready to file assault charges against them. At this point, my galaxy brain kicked into high gear, as I realized that my mono-e-mono type fight would lead my will to live ending. I had to get creative, so I trapped myself in the cleaning room, where I decided to utilize the ability to hit these Hammer of Dawn fuckers through the wall and window. It was somehow peaceful watching the scientist and Deacon beat the shit out of these bots, and after what felt like an eternity, Deacon and the anti-breather managed to destroy the Doomers. Returning to the Institute, we plugged the big AA battery, which will power all the local McDonald's and Burger King for eons to come. A straight success for the name of science, but we weren't done yet. Father gave me the opportunity to lead one of the stock meetings, where I gracefully announced that we would be bringing a Chipotle to the Institute. People cheered and the shareholders were extremely happy, but my happiness got cut short as I received a leak from one of my sources that the Brotherhood of Steel will be dropping a diss track on the railroad. I rushed instantly back to my home base, where I informed the decaffeinated synths that the Brotherhood was uploading. They were absolutely shocked, and I instantly began to prepare, but it was too late. Generally, defending the command center was no issue, as we were simply able to overpower the brothers with all the backup from the railroad. With the sheer strength we exhibited as a team, the Steelers simply couldn't rival us. Then my character decided that he was the hero, and now it was our job to clear the rest of the catacombs by ourselves. Gloria decided to take one for the team and flopped over like Talia in the truck scene. That's how I knew she was really dead. My fear kicked into high gear after I turned the corner to be instantly met by a knight and a straight shooter. The soldier was like the opposite of a stormtrooper. This bitch did not miss and completely annihilated my health bar within seconds. I managed to look out completely, and this brain-dead doofus overswung for some extra damage, which made this first fight manageable. Yet my ass was completely beat by this armored fucker. The best I could do was run in to get some damage and hope that I could knock out his meat straight out of his hands. I tried just running past the knight, but this was my first major mistake, as this resulted in me running into the reinforcements. At this point, I was receiving massive loads from both ends, which resulted in an instant load screen situation. This meant I had to utilize my favorite strat of going through the HQ door, healing, and waiting for the knights to reset. Unfortunately, the cyberbullying didn't seem to be stopping, and I was facing a wall of death. We were only about halfway through the catacombs, and I felt like the motherfucker trying to ice skate uphill. Our next foe came truly packing, as this guy was raining massive amounts of bullets with his minigun. But I was one step ahead, as I was gifted with a pillar, which allowed me to dance around and bonk the living soul out of the knight. We eventually got to succeed, but we weren't out of the situation just yet. We still had one more floor to deal with. Things were a little different this time around, as I was able to utilize my signature door strat till it stopped working, and I finished the last remaining amount of knights, which resulted in the church becoming a safe space for the railroad and I. Personally, I had enough of the brothers for at least 2 lifetimes, but our squad within the railroad had a different plan. They were ready to go in the offensive, which made my muscles clench harder than ever. I refreshed in some supplies and headed for the police station, where we had a fresh set of problems. Most of the Brotherhood were relatively easy to beat, as the space was far more open, which allowed me to single out these creatures far more easily. Once inside, I felt like I received some kind of blessing, as most of my enemies were just regular Joes and Johns, without any power armor, which meant getting past this section was pretty much a cakewalk. Things took a very fast turn once I made my way to the roof. I met a fate much worse than cock and ball torture. Deacon decided that he would no longer play the game and bug out. At this point, my mental was completely shattered. I tried a solution of reloading to a previous save, using console commands to reset his AI, which resulted in him being naked for some odd reason, and I even tried to point at the helicopter just so you'd get in. After 20 minutes of trying a vast number of fixes, this bald Mr. Clean lookalike finally decided to function like his code intended to, and we were off to the Pridwin, where I did some minor cosplaying and planted some charges. After which, I got to enjoy a romantic sundown with Deacon as the ship slowly dropped into flames. With the Brotherhood gone, what this meant was we were finally in the endgame. I had my sights on the Institute. I returned to the base of operations, took out some shareholders, and brought my people to start the takeover. We couldn't go through the main entrance, so we took the side entrance. Things were relatively easy as I had copious amounts of backup, and the baddie synths were pretty much a walk in the park for us at this point. I obviously did my portion of damage, but it was nice to have a break from the ass pounding I've received throughout this run. I went to say my final goodbyes to Sean, did some hacking and planted the explosives on the reactor we spent 2 years of my life getting. I even got to pick up a stray, but I wasn't in the mood for paying child support. With the explosion of the Institute, this meant we have completed the base game with only using one of the worst weapons within Fallout 4. But we weren't done just yet. To continue the high intensity of this cosplay of masochism, I jumped straight into the Pearl Harbor DLC. But if I'm gonna be honest, there wasn't much of a challenge or that much fighting. I managed to beat the DLC relatively quick. Things took quite a turn on Nuka World though. Normally for this DLC, the mission activates only after level 30, or you can go there whenever you feel ready. At this point, I was only about level 23, so I was a few levels below, but this didn't deter me from the challenge of autism. At the train station, I had only a small taste of what the raiders had in mind, and somewhat felt like a trap too, as I simply demolished all the raiders who stood in my way towards the door of the train. Once I made my way downstairs, I got to meet one of the conductors of this train. This disabled homeless man sold me on helping his family, but the only thing I was sold on was the ass blasting I was about to bring to the world with the raiders. As I took the train, I had deja vu that I was about to enter the Black Mesa facility and seeing a Half-Life title card. As soon as we landed, things got kicked into high gear, where I had to complete a round of Doritos Crash Course, which led me straight to my first boss of Dookie World. Fortunately, I had a guardian angel by my side, Gage, who gave me a water gun. One might say this would break the rules of this run, but this squirt shooter did no damage, but it allowed me to lay the pipe on Coulter, who got literally rocked with the sheer strength of my razor-covered rolling pin. With my win over Coulter, I somehow became the boss of the Raiders. I'm not sure how I'm qualified for this job, but hey, in this economy, it's better than nothing. My first task came with meeting all of the factions. I did some light threats, which gained me the respect of the bosses of Nuka World. With that done, we started the quest of the Grand Tour. Nuka World has 5 different areas that need to be beat. I need to assign a faction to those areas. We started the grand journey by hitting up Drake's favorite location, Kitty Kingdom. This place was a literal nightmare. I had the misfortune of not only getting attacked by giga amounts of ghouls, but this place had a gimmick of spraying radiated water. There's no doubt that the radiation will incite some form of long-term cancer effects. I did manage to turn off the brain-rotting inducing fountains, but the Wizard of Ghoul would turn it back on. I'll be honest with you when I say this. I was losing my mind. The constant ticking of radiation inched me closer to a stool and a rope. I ended up reloading one of my saves to stack up on Radaway to ensure I even had a chance of survival. I even re-cleared all the ghouls I previously vanquished. Eventually I found Oswaldo the Giant Cunto, and honestly, his fight wasn't all that difficult. It was the standard fare of blocking and swinging, but as soon as I thought this was the end of the Green Goblin cosplayer, he teleported away, which meant I was back on the hunt. Since this was my first time playing this DLC, I spent a good portion searching for the Green Ghoul. I managed to find him and send him to our final fight in the closing act. I tried my best to dissuade this fucker from fighting, but he still had the dog in him. I was quite impressed by the fight that Bethesda had made. Not only was this a multiple tiered fight between 2 gods, but it even had a wave of enemies to humble me in this challenge. Yet, I decimated him so hard that his family lineage felt the secondhand embarrassment. Afterwards, I appointed the disciples as the king of this land. Next on our list was the Nuka World Bottling Factory. If you thought that the Kitty Land was hard, the Bottling Factory increased the difficulty tenfold. This place was infested with giga-sized crabs, who were overdosed on some form of Nuka-Cola and crack. I was reaching high levels of hatred for this game, as my hits were basically doing no damage, and I began to really feel the level difference within this area. The real benefit I had here was that I found a nice desk, which allowed me to dance around the desk to lay 1 to 2 hits per every 10 seconds. The desk should have been considered as one of the MVPs, otherwise I think this could have been the end of this run. I continued to copy this strat till I finished clearing out the rest of the facility, but our story took a major turn outside, as we had the same task, but there were so many fucking crabs. But not only that, there was a queen here too. But this moron got completely stuck under some debris, so I did the only thing I could and slapped that ass right through the ground. After clearing the bottling facility, the operator became the new leaders of production for Nuka-Cola. For our next stop in our experimental vacation, we decided to head for a safari hunt. Honestly, this was probably the second easiest location to conquer out of the 5. The gator claws were an admirable foe, but it was no issue for Cinto the human ape hybrid and the rolling pin master. They didn't swing hard enough to kill me, and I didn't bonk hard enough to speedrun this. The safari closed relatively quickly and provided me with a good boost of confidence. I sadly had to banish Cito and his family from these lands, as the packs had to become the new hunters of this safari. It was time to get that snake out of our boots, as there seemed to be a worm infestation on my farm. Luckily, this quest was probably the easiest out of the 5, and the gimmick quests were pretty fun, and the Bloodworm King went down relatively quick. I decided that the operators were the most suitable people to take care of this land, and I gifted it to them on a platter. For the last quest of claiming territory, we had to go to a galaxy that was far, far away. Everything that made this run miserable in every capacity has peaked for this point. The gimmick of this arena was collecting USB sticks, which I'm supposed to plug into the main computer. But it doesn't just require 2, or 4, or 6. No, it's fucking 12. So I started my hunt in the budget vault area. Good god, there were so many robots. It got so bad that I became stun locked for so long that I managed to grow old, have a family, and die. I tried my best to abuse the door mechanic, which breaks space and time, but these guys were simply too engaged and ruined my day. To be honest, it was a miracle I even survived in the closet. But eventually I had to come out of the closet and deal with the severe amount of bots. This got me into the ultimate test of man versus machine. But in reality, it was a show match of me hiding and waiting for Skynet to take each other out. I even had to face a sentry bot to finish it all off. Nothing can beat this area, or anything in the game. This was my personal hell, and I deserved it in every capacity. Even after I finished collecting all the trash, I got a surprise meeting from a few Autobots. I was dead before the loading screen even faded in. I managed to cheese through it, going into my Pip-Boy, but dear god, what a mess. I gave this final area to the operators, which the pack really didn't like, and so they decided to betray me. This was our final push, our final mission to conquer the entirety of Fallout 4. To reach the climax of this story, first we gathered with the rest of the factions, and we began our raid upon the power plant. The pack scavengers were the final line of resistance, but at this point, I finally reached my peak power, and I was absolutely shit stomping these losers to the afterlife. I looted the remaining corpses for one last time and headed for the roof, where the pack leader stood proudly. I beat the last remaining guards and rushed for Mason. After a few final bonks, it was done. We've successfully beat Fallout 4 and all of its DLC with just the rolling pin. I wanted to say that I'm immensely thankful for you making it this far, and I hoped you enjoyed, because this run was just insane and extremely hard. But if you could leave a comment saying I personally enjoy the smell of Patrick's feet rather than Sandy's, I think it would be really funny, and the comments would be confused. Anyways, thank you for watching, and I'll be catching you in the Mojave Desert next. Peace.